Welcome to the Math Wars Meta Multiverse. Thank you for playing Math Wars Meta Volume 1, Tabletopia version, featuring the Army Men theme pack. Other theme packs are currently being developed by the publisher Hoopla, Hoorah. Conquer math with us. Math Wars Meta Volume 1 complements the Common Core math curriculum and is suitable for ages 1st grade and up since it draws upon basic math operations. The Tabletopia version of Math Wars Meta features 2 editions of the game, MWM 25 and MWM 100. Both versions offer player versus player and team versus team game modes. The game setup and gameplay are basically the same for both versions and both game modes. The differences will be highlighted as we go through the rules hack of the complete game rules to get you game ready in order to jump into the game. The complete game rules of the Tabletopia version is available on the Math Wars Meta Tabletopia game page. You will also find the MWM answer key included on the game page, which we'll cover momentarily. Please note that Tabletopia is a sandbox board game platform. As such, there are no automated game features and the game rules are not enforceable. Players can ultimately play the game any way they want to play it. Each player has a game zone and game components within their player zone. The player zone consists of a Count Meta card deck, a Math Crate card deck, a victory card counter, a game board, and a scorecard. Each player zone has 7 areas of gameplay, which are the Count Meta Draw Deck, the Count Meta Battle Pile, the Count Meta Spoils Pile, the Math Crates Draw Deck, the Math Crates Battle and Discard Pile, the Victory Cards Counter, and the Scorecard. The goal of Math Wars Meta is to be the first player or team to win 4 victory cards for the MWM 25 edition, or 5 victory cards for the MWM 100 edition. A victory card is awarded each time a player or team wins a round. A round is won when all opposing players or all opposing teams run out of Count Meta cards. Before the game begins, players choose one of 2 options for what they do with the discarded Count Meta cards at the end of each hand. The recommended option for both player versus player and team versus team game modes in the Tabletopia version is for each player to discard their own Count Meta cards into their own Count Meta Spoils pile. The other option is having the winning player or the winning teammate on the winning team collect all opposing players' Count Meta cards from each losing player and place them in the winning player's Count Meta Spoils pile. More about this momentarily. At the start of each round, each player shuffles their Count Meta deck and their Math Crate deck. Players who are accessing the game via an internet browser can right-click on the deck and choose the shuffle icon. Players who are accessing the game via mobile can tap the shuffle icon on the screen. Overall gameplay is the same for both Math Wars Meta MWM 25 and MWM 100 editions. Gameplay is basically the same for player versus player and team versus team game modes. However, the team versus team game mode has an additional step, which we'll cover momentarily. Math War Meta's gameplay is simultaneous rather than turn-based, though each player can play through each step in the hand at their own pace. At the beginning of each round in each hand, for both MWM 25 and MWM 100 editions, players draw and play the top card from their own Count Meta draw pile onto their own Count Meta battle pile on their game board. The first Count Meta card placed on the Count Meta battle pile should automatically land face up. However, if additional Count Meta cards have to be played during the hand on top of the Count Meta battle pile, those additional cards must manually be flipped face up to be played. Cards can be flipped by right-clicking on the card and choosing the flip icon if playing the game via an internet browser, or tapping the flip icon on the screen if playing the game via a mobile device. Each player records the count meta number on the scorecard by cycling through the count meta number tiles. Players draw and play the top card from their own Math Crate draw pile onto their own Math Crate battle pile on their game board. The first Math Crate card placed on the Math Crate battle pile should automatically land face up. However, if additional Math Crate cards have to be played during the hand on top of the Math Crate battle pile, those additional cards must manually be flipped face up to be played. Each player records the math operation symbol from their own Math Crate card by cycling through the math operation tile on their scorecard. Each player then records the Math Crate number on their scorecard by cycling through the Math Crate number tiles. Players calculate the math operation between their own count meta card and their own Math Crate battle piles. However, if the math operation is not calculable, or if the math operation is division that results in a number with a remainder, then only the count meta card is used. Players can use scratch paper or a calculator in their calculation if necessary. Players record the solution on the scorecard by cycling through the Your Solution number tiles. If the solution to the math problem is not calculable or does not result in a whole number, then only the count meta card number is recorded for Your Solution. Please note, this is where the player versus player game mode differs from the team versus team game mode. In the team versus team game mode, each team's teammate also records their own Your Solution onto each of their teammate's solution on their teammate's scorecard. All teammate solutions are added to the player's own Your Solution and recorded in the Your Team Solutions total on the scorecard. Players or a moderator can check their own solutions and other players' solutions with the MWM 25 or the MWM 100 answer key, which is included as a link on the Math Wars Meta Tabletopia page. If the player is accessing the game via an internet browser, they can open an additional tab for referencing the answer key and keep it open throughout the game. The MWM answer key corresponds to the count meta deck. Each page shows a table of the Math Crate math operations for each count meta card number. Please note, if the answer for division, which is called the quotient, is blanked out on the answer key, then the player only uses the count meta card in their calculation. The player records the count meta number in Your Solution on your scorecard. In the player versus player game mode, after all players complete their math problem calculation and record it in their own Your Solution section of the scorecard, players determine which player has the highest numbered solution from all of the Your Solution calculated results. The player with the highest Your Solution wins the hand, or potentially the round, should the number be high enough. In the team versus team game mode, after all teams' players record their own team solution, players determine the highest numbered solution from all the team solutions. The team with the highest team solution wins the hand, or potentially the round, should the number be high enough. All players record the highest team solution on their scorecard. In the player versus player game mode, the losing players subtract their own Your Solution calculated result from the player with the highest calculated result, which is the highest solution. The result of the subtraction operation is called the difference. This is also the number of count meta cards each losing player will have to discard. Each losing player records the difference on their scorecard. In the team versus team game mode, the losing team's players subtract their team's Your Team Solution total from the highest team solution. The result is the number of count meta cards each losing team's players will have to discard. Each losing team's players records the difference on their scorecard. The players who lost the hand or round discard the number of count meta cards from their count meta draw pile by manually moving each card or using the mouse wheel to indicate the number of cards to discard. The losing players also discard the count meta cards on the count meta battle pile. Depending on what option players choose at the beginning of the game for what happens to the discarded count meta cards, the losing players either put those discarded count meta cards into their own count meta spoils pile or into the winning player's count meta spoils pile. After the discarded count meta cards are selected from the count meta draw pile, they are either dragged and dropped onto the player's own count meta spoils pile or the winning player's count meta spoils pile, depending on which option players choose at the beginning of the game. The winning player or winning team's teammates discard the count meta cards from their own count meta battle pile to their own count meta spoils pile. If a losing player accidentally splashes the table with the discarded count meta cards, the hand or round is immediately considered over in order to save time and effort. Rather than attempting to pick up the discarded cards that were splashed, the hand or round is reset. We'll discuss resetting the game momentarily. If the players choose the option of putting the discarded count meta cards into their own count meta spoils pile, then those cards are considered dead and not playable for the rest of the hand or potentially the round. Given the manual gameplay mechanics of Tabletopia's sandbox platform, this is the recommended option. If a losing player or a losing team's teammate runs out of count meta cards in their count meta draw pile to discard, then they are out of the hand or round. If the players choose the option of putting the discarded count meta cards into the winning player's count meta spoils pile, then those cards are playable once the player runs out of count meta cards in their count meta draw pile. Players simply shuffle those discarded count meta cards from their own count meta spoils pile and put the deck onto the count meta draw pile for use in the next hand, should the round or game not already have been won during that hand.
When a player is knocked out of the hand for both player versus player and team versus team game modes, they cycle all of their scorecard tiles back to their blank starting position to enable better gameplay and game flow for the remaining players. This step will help keep track of the remaining players or teams in the hand.
Depending on which count meta discard option was chosen at the beginning of the game, if a losing player or a losing team's teammate runs out of count meta cards in their count meta draw pile and runs out of count meta cards in their count meta spoils pile to also discard, then they are out of the hand. At the end of the hand, all players discard their Math Crate card by flipping it over on the dual Math Crate battle pile and Math Crate spoils pile. When all but one player in player versus player mode or a team's teammate in team versus team mode runs out of count meta cards for either of the count meta discard options, the remaining player or the remaining team's teammate wins the round. They receive a victory card for themselves or their team. The winning player or a fellow teammate on the winning team increases their victory card counter by 1. Before proceeding to the next round of gameplay, players or a moderator enter the current number of victory cards that players or teams have won up to that point in the game into the chat room. After a player or team wins a victory card, the game is reset. Please note, the game is also reset when a losing player accidentally splashes the table with their discarded count meta cards.
To help discourage and reduce intentional or excessive ace splashings, players or teams may vote in the chat room to award a victory card to the player or team that won the hand. The game is reset and the hand's winning player or team increases their victory card counter by 1. If increasing the victory card counter by 1 gives the player or team 4 victory cards,
MWM 25
or 5 victory cards for the
MWM 100,
wins the game.
Players who are accessing the game via an internet browser right-click on the Tabletopia icon in the top left corner of the screen, and they choose Restart from the drop-down menu. Players who are accessing the game via mobile tap on the Tabletopia icon in the top left corner of the screen, and they choose Reset from the drop-down menu. All players shuffle their Count Meta and Math Crate decks at the start of the new round. Since the victory card counter was also reset, the player or team victory card counters are set to the number of victory cards they had won thus far at the end of the previous round. Gameplay continues and repeats until a player or team wins 4 victory cards for MWM 25 or 5 victory cards for MWM 100. Thank you for watching this tutorial and for playing Math Wars Meta. Be on the lookout for other Math Wars Meta theme packs, game products, and more. Math Wars Meta! Conquer math with us! Created by Richard A. Morgan.